Welcome back to Policy for Normal People. This is your host. In this special segment of the monthly market update, we talk about the financial markets, how policy intersects with that, and Marcus's special focus on helping Main Street meet Wall Street by understanding the markets better for the average, normal, everyday person's life and financial decision making. Marcus, welcome. Good to see you again.
Hey, Christy, how are you? Thanks for having me on again.
Yeah, absolutely. Always a pleasure. We're going to dive right in. Our topic today is wealth and war. As you know, folks, the United States has initiated war with Iran in collaboration with the Israeli government. That's all I'm going to say about that politically, which is to say, I'm not going to be political, as we do not do that on this show. But what we do want to talk about is how the war is affecting financial markets and what that may mean for you. Without further ado, Marcus always gives his general market overview, and then we kind of dive right into that main topic and talk about a little policy intersection. What's going on in the markets lately?
Yeah, markets have been volatile. That's one way of putting it. Since the last time we sat down and spoke, we've seen our first down month across several markets in February. Stock markets, when I'm referring to markets, referring to stock markets, the S&P, the Dow Jones, they were down last month, as was the NASDAQ. Small caps were down, which have been leading the market. We were seeing a flight to European indexes. They've been outperforming here lately. That's kind of changed here in the last few days. But the last few days have been really tricky for markets. And as they try to digest what's going on, we've had the Supreme Court decision, which is a big part. We probably should talk about that a little bit as far as how it impacts
Yeah, for
tariffs.
sure.
Since the last time we spoke, we've had Fed data come out. We've had inflation come out a little bit higher than expected. Jobs come out today a little bit stronger than expected. So with the war going on, people aren't exactly sure where the Fed's next move can be. And then we also are sitting here with, obviously, with the war oil prices. So I guess we can start with the oil prices, right? We just jump right in there.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, I saw this morning, I just by coincidence happened to be talking to one of my financial advisors up here in my neck of the woods here in Virginia through Edward Jones. And she happened to mention that oil prices had spiked about 10% since last week. So seeing a lot of fluctuation there. Are you seeing, is that confirmed with what you're seeing too?
Yeah. So Main Street oil prices, I pay attention to gas prices. Where I,
We all do. We need it.
so an example, Sunday, I put some gas in me and my wife's car, 241 a gallon down here right outside Charlotte, Wall Street
Mhm.
South. And today I went by the gas station where we start recording. It was 301 at the same place. So 3 days, you see the prices going up, right? Initially, with conflicts like this, I mean, we can look back historically, like the last 40 years, and you'll see that initially you'll have a spike in oil prices. But if you go out 8 weeks or so, oil prices that usually come back down, come back into the same range they were in. Stock prices do the same. Like initially they'll go down, but if you look out 8 weeks, like 95% of the time, 90% of the time, stock markets are up like 4%. So the initial shock, the duration of the war. So if this is a short war as it's been projected, then it may not have that much of an impact on the markets and oil prices at home, a long-term impact. But if this turns into a prolonged war, we've all been, you and I were here for the first and second Gulf War. If this turns into, say, the third Gulf War, something that's just an extended period of time, then that could see impacts on the markets and impacts on oil prices overall. Well,
Right. And I think if I understand correctly, we do here in the United States still have a surplus, an oil surplus in our whole holdings. So wondering, how that's all going to intersect with what's happening as well. I know that the government wants to has expressed a lot of interest and has taken action, in fact, to open up drilling for more oil in various parts of the country. Again, we're not going to get into the politics of the good, bad, and the ugly of that on here, but will be interesting to see what decisions are made in terms of the reserves that we currently have. I know I talked to some Canadian friends this morning, and just we were talking about other things, but this came up. That they have similar concerns in terms of how this will affect their reserves and what they do in terms of imports and things like that. So it's certainly not uniquely a U.S. problem. It's an issue for all countries that are importing their oil reserves. And so it'll be interesting to see what happens with that, Marcus. And yes, you're right. You and I lived through both Gulf wars. We saw what happened there. It was 309 at the pump this morning when I filled up here in Alexandria, Virginia. And folks, that's just literally a stone's throw from Washington D.C. A few miles. So we're traditionally always a little higher here, but compared to where you are, for instance, Marcus, but nonetheless, it was a jump from about 269 last week here is what I remember it being. So but yeah, lots of stuff to watch out for there. I did hear though that the market as a whole was down about 1 to 2% from its all-time high, but the all-time high being that, I guess makes that still pretty stabilized. Do you agree?
Well, the market's kind of seeing through this right now. Like I said, the market, when missiles fire, stocks go higher, unfortunately. Like, it's sad. Obviously, yeah, we should take a second and think about the troops and the people who are actually protecting us so we can do these
Of
things and
course.
spread this message. The ultimate soldiers, ultimate warriors out there. But
And
more into
lives have
the
already been lost.
right, right.
Yeah.
So their families. But ultimately into the impact, I want to step back a little bit with the oil and kind of just explain why the oil, because there are already oil in the ships right now, right? Sitting in that Strait of Hormuz, and you can't get through it. That's the problem with the oil right now. So you can't get the oil through. And they have oil, they have productions. Iran hasn't hit any of the production facilities yet for the oil. They're not really messing with those. They're hitting other strategic positions, but they haven't really started to hit the oil production facilities yet. So the oil is there. It's just whether or not we can get the oil through. If we were to move the oil from our reserves to put them into other parts of the world, I don't think the American people would like that very well. The American people haven't really figured out how we're going to stomach this war, right? That's a really big part of war. Some people who lived through conflicts like Vietnam realize that eventually, regardless of where you're at, if the public and American sentiment can't deal with the impact of war, you're going to lose that war. You're going to lose troops. You're going to lose whatever you have going on. That can be detrimental, and that's when you start to see oil prices go up. If we were to start sending our reserves, which are abundant now, out to other countries, that would send out a message. One of the messages that we sent too, because oil prices were up, but they came back down like yesterday when the president came out and said they would ensure that the U.S. would insure these oil tankers in the strait that go through because Iran had threatened to like blow some of them up. They
Right.
effectively closed the port, but you can't really close it, or the strait, but you can't really close it other than, blowing things up. One of the things is that the insurance that the president is guaranteeing for these tankers in there, it's supposed to be only for American companies, but a lot of this oil that is in there is going to China. So how will the American people handle that? Right, we're providing insurance for Chinese oil as well. So I just wanted to talk about that for a second.
Yeah, that's a lot. That's a lot to take in, because our negotiations regarding tariffs with China, as well as other countries, is also playing itself out and continuing to be a part of this bigger conversation as well. So, yeah, I mean, it's worth considering all of that. Well, we've talked a good bit already about the main topic, which of course is the markets and the war. What else is going on in other places relative to the market that you'd like to highlight today?
Oh, another thing we've seen since last time we met is the market crashed. It had, like I said, the market was down. We had sell-offs, the SaaS sell-off.
Tell us a little bit more about that. I'm not as up on that.
Gotcha. Yeah. So the software as a service, SaaS. So we've had different uh, upgrades come out from Claude and ChatGTP. All these different AI companies have come out with things that will eliminate jobs. So we saw like Block last week lay off 4,000 people out of their 10,000 workforce. You don't have to be a math genius to know it's like 40%, right? So 40% of the workforce is being replaced by AI inside of that. So what we had saw a few weeks ago, we may have talked about a little bit in our last
We did a
podcast,
little, yeah. And I'm
was how
curious
it was.
about how much it's related to replacement of jobs temporarily because of capital investment up front as they expand, build centers and that kind of thing versus what's maybe going to be projected for long term, or is it too early to know that?
Well, with all AI, some people will be disruptive. Some people will be um, totally taken out, destroyed in this situation, right? One example, Larry Ellison at Oracle gave the other day as to a way a company, he said like his, obviously he's going to speak highly of his own company, is that they have, so AI AI scrubs the internet and brings you all this information in. So that's where people in the seat per model, like companies like ServiceNow or Salesforce, where it used to be that you would buy a CD or something and put it on there for your sales team, your customer relationships. And then when the information became more updated, you would have to get another CD. But it's like one CD that you spread through the whole entire team. Then the all moved to a per seat model where people were being paid by the actual seats that you had because all the information was in the cloud. And whenever anything was updated, it would be updated for everyone. So say you're paying $10 per seat for 1,000 seats. What the disruption was that is that a lot of this work could be done by AI bots now. So SaaS didn't need as many seats, right? But these bots are scrubbing public information. So Larry Ellison with Oracle was stating that the bots can't get the private information. That's where Oracle has, like, they have this private information, Oracle, Palantir, companies like this. This is where AI can't really disrupt companies like that yet. So there will be companies that will be disrupted and completely eliminated in this process. Just like there were companies with the .com and trains and the industrial revolution. It's just, there's always going to be things displaced and moved out.
Yeah, for sure. Oh, yeah, and this is a conversation that will continue because, it's kinda hard to predict, and, we always have a tendency as human beings to the panic happens first, and, there's a bit of, excitement, which is understandable, but then a lot of times you kinda have to wait it out too to really see. I've heard lots of conversations about white collar jobs, the irony that many of the tech jobs, are the innovators of AI have actually put themselves out of jobs, in many cases, and to what extent that is going to be a significant impact on the workforce overall. It's happening in some places, like you were saying, but to what extent it's going to be, you know, even worse or really affect a significant part of the workforce to the extent that because these are consumers too, and so everything is connected in that way. If you have a large portion, a large segment of the workforce at any one time in particular that is laid off looking for work, then you've also got that amount of consumers that are going to decline in the economy as well, or the way in which they consume products and services is going to dramatically change, even if that's temporary. But it's an interesting, if not a little bit scary, kind of thing to think about. But AI is here to stay, and I know that I use generative AI, as do you, Marcus. In many of our everyday activities. Far beyond just a Google search, creating, in my case, graphic design and lots of different concepts and content and things like that. So I think what's going to have to happen is that policy is going to have to catch up. The law is going to have to catch up. I know there's a lot of concerns about cybersecurity and things like that. And that's kind of can segue us into something else I wanted to talk about, which is the ongoing internal war between Anthropic and the AI services that it provides to the Pentagon. A lot of people are probably aware that from the news reports that there's a there's a fuss going on between the Pentagon and Anthropic, and I think Anthropic's leadership, Dario Amodei, their CEO, put out a statement across social media just a few days ago, a very long statement about the rationalization and their reasoning for why they were pushing back against the government on concerns about surveilling our private information. So, talking about, to what extent it would give access and what would be done with that. So I think there are guardrails in place right now through Anthropic to prevent that from happening, for preventing a breach. But it's an interesting conversation that's happening. Any thoughts on that and how that might be affecting the rest of the tech sector in particular in the markets?
Yeah. So first of all, here's a question to ask, right? So compared to the horse and buggy era, right? Do we have a lot less horses than we used to have? We have a lot less buggies. When cars came out and airplanes came out, do we have a lot less cars or airplanes? I'm just saying, like, with technology, these things are going to innovate and people are going to find ways to use them, right? Whether it be for leisure, whether it be for work, whether it be for something. This stuff's going to work itself out. As far as Anthropic, I mean, we have to be vigilant. I don't want to be dismissive of that. We have to be vigilant as people,
Yeah.
as citizens. As far as Anthropic and OpenAI, that got a little messy there. They were at first stemmed from the situation in Venezuela. That was where they first Anthropic was questioning the use of their technology, and they were questioning whether or not the Department of Defense could have just free reign, and on the Department of Defense just have free reign other technology. Venezuela also ties back into this whole thing as well, because you cut off a major supply of oil with Venezuela, which also goes over to China and Russia. So cut those off. We're cutting off oil all around the world. So that's a big thing to watch in this whole macro picture. But US,
Mhm.
right.
Yeah.
But inside of Anthropic, so Anthropic, but if you remember back with OpenAI, when they started, they were nonprofit. They switched to for profit. They just
Yeah.
seem to be a little bit more adjacent to the White House and to their moves. But Anthropic did not want to allow the surveillance of citizens in America. They didn't want to use their weapons for certain things. They didn't want the monitoring things. You know, Friday was the deadline. OpenAI stepped right into that role, said, we'll do it. And then Sam Altman is trying to walk back the statements like, oh, well, we still want these protections because his staff was upset. They were upset about these things, you know.
So bit of a
Yeah, they
mutiny
were upset.
inside.
So
Yeah.
yeah, so he was trying to walk some of this stuff back, saying, you know, we do care about we have the same concerns basically that Anthropic had. But he recently just came out, I mean, like in the last 24 hours and said, ultimately, at the end of the day, the Department of War has the final say over how our technology is used. Then he also pointed out that if he didn't step into the place, that XAI would probably step in there as well, which he didn't tell him.
Somebody would, yeah. But,
Yeah.
I think this will end up in the courts ultimately at some point because don't you? I mean, because it isn't just the Pentagon has or the Department of War has the final say. I mean, we're talking about something that gets into privacy laws and all too. So, at what point it's going to run afoul of the laws is going to be some interesting questions come out of that, I would think. I don't know how
Well,
I think it's having trouble catching up.
I mean, how many times in our lifetime have we seen reports of the government spying on citizens?
I was just gonna say, one of the things that I thought of instantly with this going on, like you, I don't want to dismiss it. It's a serious thing, and I care about it. But to what extent have we already ceded a lot of that privacy and a lot of, and I don't mean just voluntarily where we decide ourselves individually to go on to social media and share whatever it is we want to share, but even them extracting. I mean, we had these conversations, similar conversations and concerns with the government and cell phone use. There was talk going on about that. Government wanting access at different times, especially during 9/11. There was a lot of concern over to what extent the government could look at cell phone data to get information from people, see what they're texting about, what they're sending messages about, and so forth. So it's not new. The idea that it's just happening because of AI's entrance onto the stage would be incorrect. And I swear Google listens to us. I no more say something here at home, to my husband, and then we get an ad that's related to something we might be talking about. That I'm a little more worried about that in a way.
Well, I mean, literally, I think it was Apple that was getting sued because Siri was listening to people. So yeah, if you're gonna put something out,
Yeah.
if you put something out in the ether, you better assume that somewhere something is listening to it, which ties into all these smart systems that we have in our house, all the electronics, all that stuff side back together. If you want someone to, you want to tell someone something, just tell them face to face, I guess. A better way to keep it.
Yeah, that good old fashioned conversation, that hasn't gone out of style, or I hope it doesn't for sure. So we talked about oil, we've talked about Anthropic, war related effects on the market. I'd like to take a little bit of time that we have left here today, Marcus, to focus more on you and how you work with your clients with teaching financial literacy and coaching. And in particular, I think you've adopted a new tool called Monarch, and I'd like to hear more about how you use that to work with your clients.
Oh yeah, Monarch Money. Monarch Money is a personal budgeting finance app that helps people. You can go in there. It has AI in it as well. It's really good for people who are trying to share their information with, like, say, your spouse, people who just start budgeting together, people who've been doing it on paper and pad, want to air all this stuff into their computer. You want to have real time access to your budgeting, to your finances. I know my clients share their accounts with me or share it where I can go in there and see, and we can talk about things if
Mm.
we need to. One thing I will say about Monarch is it is I don't want to say if it's age difference, but it's better if you start out uploading all your stuff the first time on a desktop situation and then go into the app because it could just be confusing on a phone to look at all that stuff for the first time. But Monarch's a great tool. It helps with personal budget. Like I said, I use it with clients. So yeah, and if anyone on here wants to use Monarch, there's a link that you can use. But I will maybe compensate if you use the link for me. Yeah, so Monarch is a great tool. I don't want to jump too far away from the Supreme Court decision though,
Yeah,
and the
no, we do
tariffs.
want to. We should cover that. That's another important development. I think even since the last time we talked, perhaps.
Right. So we had the Supreme, and I think some Supreme Court decisions came out today. I haven't seen the results of those. They may be speaking about Lisa Cook, and also, Tom Tillis. Sir, Tom Tillis is locking up these passages or nomination process. He said he's going to
Mhm.
lock up all the committees he's on now until he gets confirmation or gets answers with Chairman Powell's investigation and maybe even Lisa Cook's. But anywho, back to the tariffs of SCOTUS. So SCOTUS came out with the decision, and as of all things law, like you said, you're up there in DC and you know policy and you know how these things work. It's really what it said, like the decision and the reflection. First of all, the Supreme Court did not give any means for paying these tariffs back, right? Immediately, well, once the president spoke later on that day, he said this would be in litigation 4 to 5 years. That was his
Right,
expectation.
right. And then he had a
Justice Kavanaugh,
workaround. He's going through a different act, correct?
right.
Yeah.
Justice
Yeah. So
Kavanaugh pretty much laid out in his dissent the way that you can go about it. But they had already been planning on this. If this decision came back this way, I mean, that day the markets didn't go crazy down or up because of the decision. That didn't have anything particularly to do with the markets that day. What people were worried about, it was already expected. It was already priced in, per se, that the Supreme Court would go against it. But then he's come back and he said there will be 15% tariffs across the board for everyone, baseline minimum. I heard Secretary Bessent speaking this morning. They were asking when those will go into effect. He said those should be in effect by the end of the week. So we'll have global tariffs at 15%. Those things play into the markets, right? Tariffs and tariff uncertainty. I don't know if y'all are all old enough to remember
sure.
last February through April when we had the tariff shock, but those type of things play off. So he didn't have any remedy from the Supreme Court. So even if this tariff revenue is to be refunded, like you said, how are we going to refund it? I don't know. I was thinking different ways. Maybe they'll try some type of, I don't think these dollars that are in there are ever going back. So maybe it'll be like a
I was going
debit
to say, do you
or
think it'll
credit.
ever actually happen at
Oh,
all?
yeah, I don't know if they're going to give it back to the American people. Like, I don't know because who paid the tariff? Because part of it was that the foreign governments were paying the tariffs. But then we had reports coming out, like we said last time, that said the Americans were paying like 90% of the tariffs. So how does this all go back? It's just going to be sticky. I don't think this is anything that is resolved during Trump's current administration.
Well, I'm sure that there was a little bit of strategy around knowing that. Even if it causes a fight, it's going to take a long time to resolve the fight. And that wouldn't happen until long after he'd already made a decision, acted on it, and is out of office. So,
And speaking of the point of view, when President Trump was speaking yesterday about the Iran war, he said we won the tariff case. Point of view, right? He thinks they won, but they did enumerate a lot more powers to him. Well, not enumerate, but they verbally gave him more powers in his mind and his administration's mind that they can take and use to implement more of these tariffs. I think it's Section 301 that they're talking about.
mhm. Yeah. Well, I think we're in a different era with this president. Again, not getting political here, but just simply observing, even myself as as a citizen that, we've not had a president in my lifetime I know that has been as aggressive with the not just, intentions or desires to change a policy or do something different, but just going ahead and doing it and then letting the cards fall kind of, and so I think it's caught Congress and at least some and policymakers in general, sort of off guard, just in terms of dealing with the executive branch in the manner in which it's now the environment now is. So it's fascinating to just kind of watch all of that and see how that's all how the cards are falling and for good, bad, or otherwise. But I do think that we're in a time that is a bit unfamiliar in terms of what the president has decided he's going to do, regardless of what tradition or the norms used to be, and then just seeing how all that works itself out.
Well, as we mentioned before on previous episodes, that the executive branch continues, and this did not start with Donald Trump, continues to increase their power, and the Congress just seems to continue to let them do it. So that's who has to come in and kind of balance down the president's power or the Supreme Court. So right, the checks and balances in our government have to come in, but the executive branch historically continues to get more and more power. They're voting today or on the war power resolutions, which
Hmm.
even if it passed, Donald Trump's not going to sign it. So,
No, right. So there you go. Yeah. But, in terms of what we talk about here and the effects that these things have on markets, is it fair to say, and we can kind of wrap up with this, but I want to give you an opportunity to talk about anything remaining that you'd like to share with the public today. But is it fair to say that the markets are taking a cautious sort of behavior right now? I mean, I don't you don't see any massive fluctuation or reactionism that I can see. I mean, it seems like there's a little bit of ebb and flow, but we don't see a massive drop or spike or anything like that going on, or am I missing something there? Are they just kind of waiting to see?
all right. So let's talk about what happened with the right since the attacks. Oil prices initially spiked. Crypto flushed. Crypto came back. The dollar firmed up a lot. The dollar started to firm up. I don't know if people noticed this. The dollar firmed up. Gold prices went down. We had this precious metal move.
Go
Now precious
high
metals.
for a while.
Right. It's still very high, but it's come down. So I'm like, gold's still historically high, but it's come
Hmm.
down all times high, all time highs. Gold and silver have started to trade like kind of memeish now with like meme stocks with these moves up and down. We've seen the 10-year, it dipped below, I like the 10-year treasury note. It dipped below 4%, but now it's back above 4%. So generally, if you were thinking people were running to safety, you would see the opposite, right? You would see these yields get lower because people are selling bonds, right? You're going higher because people are buying as a sign of maybe more confidence. And then as the dollar is going up, increasing their strength, you see gold go down. It's just so there are things moving, but the stock market itself, like from Monday to today and a few days, it's just been a couple of days. But if you didn't see anything, and you just looked at your account Monday and you looked at today, it wouldn't really be very different at all.
Yeah, and then of course we can't forget the housing market, which we often talk about on here too.
Yeah,
Mortgage rates have dipped below 5 or at 5% in a lot of parts of the country, even in places like where I am, where, they're very high comparatively to the rest of the country. But in some parts, when you get out of the metropolitan area and into the suburbs, the rates are coming down.
yeah, mortgage rate. So another thing that we saw last week, like I said, so with the 10-year, that's why I look at 10 years is usually
Mhm.
somewhat tied with mortgage rates. We saw the average down to like 6.09%. It was the lowest since 2022, maybe. We also saw a lot of people looking to file refinance applications. Last week was a strong week for the housing market, or as far as like activity goes. But what people realize or don't realize is that if you do refinance, you have to get about 75 basis point, 0.75 for it even makes sense to refinance. So is that spread large enough? I don't know. I think the mortgage rates are going to stay right around where they are now. Speaking in mortgage rates and supplies and tying it all back to jobs, um, because we have to have jobs in this consumer driven economy. Secretary Besson was speaking about jobs, how you work. Say you're building a data center, right? You're building a data center, you need 3,000 people to build it. Then eventually, just 3,000 people, once they build a data center, this data center is going to create, this example was 3,000 jobs or 4,000 jobs, assuming some of those people go inside that data center into their job as well. So as long as it can create more jobs with the housing, you're like, what does this have to do with housing? It's the same type of effect, right? These people are building houses, earn income, then they can buy houses, right? Which is an economic boom for the whole cycle when people start buying houses again. But interest rates definitely have things to do with that. The tariffs have to do with that. It's all intertwined. We haven't even spoken about Kevin Warsh or Chairman Powell since they didn't have a meeting.
Right, yeah. So is there anything last as we wrap this up, is there any last thoughts you wanna share on that?
No, it'll be interesting to see if the Fed can lower rates as people expect. I think they have to stay steady for right now, stay put until they see something decisively or definitively. They will have the benefit of a little bit of time before they're meeting with the war and everything that's happening. But they have to stay diligent and look for the direction. As I mentioned with uh, Chairman Tillis or with Senator Tillis, he's not letting anything move through the committees right now. So that stuff's locked up. So yeah, we'll just see what Powell does, how data dependent they are, because the data is kind of mixed up, and people don't realize that we're still in a partial government shutdown. So that kind of stuff plays into it all too, like
Sure.
TSA funding being targeted when we're in a war across seas. Like we need some security at home, increase homeland security. All that stuff's kind of tied into it. But
Yeah.
and the Trump baby accounts, those are
Right.
active now.
Right.
People can go sign up for those.
And you have a great video on your YouTube channel. Do check this out. I blocked some time the other day specifically to just watch this. My kids are grown, but I'm going to be a grandma at some point. Not yet. No word of that yet. But I look forward to those days. He does a great job. Marcus does a fantastic job of walking you through step by step, showing you online the IRS site where the Trump baby accounts, where you sign up, what the eligibility criteria is, how you get your child signed up. So do check that out. And he's very prolific as well on LinkedIn. I know you, Marcus, I think you had a special segment and maybe that very one on LinkedIn as well. So if you're someone who spends a lot of time on LinkedIn, as I do, and Marcus does, you can also find him there as well. Marcus, great conversation as always. Marcus, folks, check him out on LinkedIn. He has a YouTube channel, as do I. Policy for Normal People is a free opportunity for you to promote your business. I offer that as a community service for business and nonprofit leaders to come on and talk about your mission and how your industry intersects with policymaking in this nation. And that's it for this time. Marcus, have a great week. I will see you in April.
Thanks, Christy. You have a great one as well. Check out the Main Street Meets Wall Street podcast and the Wall Street South Journal.
Absolutely. Will do. All right. Thanks. Bye bye now.